Welcome. Today we're talking to the Director of the Texas Department of Insurance Fraud Unit. Chris Davis goes by Associate Commissioner and Chief Investigator of the Fraud Unit at TDI. And first of all, we want to say congratulations. You had a big conviction in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, sentencing of a Texas attorney who TDI prosecutors found guilty of using the hail claims of homeowners to file lawsuits against insurance companies without the homeowner's knowledge. TDI has been working on this case for some time, I believe. Is that correct, Chris?
That's correct. It's been an ongoing investigation for a couple of years at least, and it's still actually ongoing today.
Okay. He got 5 years. He lost his license to practice as an attorney. And from what I gather, there was a lot of other parties involved, and he may be telling more about the story about everybody's involvement, from public adjusters to roofers and others. It sounds like you've got more going on.
That's true. As part of his plea agreement, he did agree to provide testimony about other folks involved as well, and he did provide some of that information at his sentencing hearing last week, and he's obviously subject to recall, at later dates to provide testimony as needed. So yes, he did help us out with some information that he had firsthand knowledge of. But as I said, it's still an ongoing investigation. We fully expect additional indictments to be coming down in the coming months.
Who all was involved with that, and what courtroom? Where did that take place?
This all took place in Tarrant County with the Tarrant County District Attorney's Office, and involved investigators in the fraud unit down in the valley, here in the Austin area, as well as up in the Metroplex, and of course the Tarrant County District Attorney's Office, and we're very appreciative of our industry partners in helping us put together the information. So collectively, it was a really good, strong case, and as we continue going forward, I expect some additional indictments to come down.
Was there any help from the FBI on this case?
On this particular case, not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay.
We have other cases that are ongoing where we have investigators embedded with the FBI, and we're still involved in those investigations. But with respect to Mr. Livesey's case and the one we have still pending up there in Tarrant County, there's been really no other involvement with the federal authorities.
Let's talk about the size of your group here, your fraud unit. Seems to be growing, and the good news is you've got fraud prosecutors and investigators embedded in district attorneys' offices around the state. That seems to be growing. So can you update us?
Certainly. Yes, we've, as you know, added a 6th prosecutor in Travis County as of January 2018. I don't anticipate, growing beyond that in any time in the near future. I think what we have in place is really working well for us. We're located in the major metropolitan areas where we're seeing the large majority of our insurance fraud reporting, and so we'll probably stick with that number for a while. As for the fraud unit, we have a total of about 40 employees. More than half of that is dedicated to investigative team out in the field, and we've got investigators in McAllen, Houston, Austin, San Antonio, Dallas, Fort Worth, and of course we work cases throughout the state, so we're often on the road traveling to as far as Amarillo and Lubbock and even El Paso. So we're covering areas throughout the state, but those are where we're primarily housed, or those major cities. We've got about 10 members of our team that are dedicated to the prosecution team, including prosecutors and investigators that are embedded in the DA offices. And then the remaining staff are dedicated to unit operations, where we have our criminal analysts who will assist our investigators and prosecutors, our intake analysts who review every report that comes into the fraud unit, and we've got other staff that help out as well.
Speaking about all the fraud cases that come into the fraud unit, you have them coming in from individuals, from consumers, from probably other law enforcement officials, as well as all the insurance companies out there. Is it sometime an overwhelming number of fraud cases that come in to look at?
I wouldn't characterize it as overwhelming. Certainly, we receive a lot, and it continues to grow every year. And I credit the industry and their efforts in identifying fraud for those numbers going up. And like any law enforcement agency, we have to prioritize our efforts, and so we do that, and I think we do a good job of that. Targeting those that we think will have the greatest impact in the state to root out fraud. But I wouldn't characterize it as overwhelming. We are very busy, and again, I think we're doing a great effort in targeting those cases that I think have the greatest impact.
Where do the majority of your fraud cases come from? The reporting. Who's reporting?
Sure.
them?
I would say close to 80% is from the industry, SIUs here in the state as well as out of state, and then the other roughly 20% will come from, as you mentioned, the consumers, the public, other law enforcement agencies, from other divisions within TDI. On occasion, we get a referral from them, but by the large majority, it's from the industry.
Say a case comes in, kind of walk me through it.
Sure. So, as you know, there's a statutory obligation to report suspected insurance fraud to the fraud unit, and that's why we receive the large majority from the industry. Every report that comes in is reviewed, and it starts with our intake team. We have implemented since last year, actually maybe almost 2 years ago, a new case management system called Crossfire, which is directly tied into the online fraud reporting system at the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. And so all reporting done by the industry through NAIC or NICB will come directly to our system automatically. And so it's really made us a lot more efficient in our review of all those reports. So they come in daily. We on average get roughly 50 reports a day. And our intake team will do the initial review of those reports. Some will obviously be through review indicate strong evidence of a crime, and those reports will be directly forwarded to our captains, who will then provide a secondary review, and then they'll make a recommendation to me whether or not we ought to open a full investigation on the report. Those that are kind of borderline, we're not sure, the intake team will forward those to one of our duty investigators, who will provide a secondary review of the report, and then that investigator will then either forward it on to the captains for consideration, or will be shut down at that point.
Do you have a priority when it comes to the actual fraud case itself?
Sure. We, as I indicated, we do prioritize our efforts, and so clearly, if it's a report that indicates a significant loss, an actual loss of a felony level, then we'll typically open those. We do open cases where we have no loss, and we'll consider whether the suspect has had multiple reports filed against them in the past, or if the facts are just so egregious that the exposure that was there was significant enough that it deserves our full attention, and so we'll open those. If we have evidence where the victims are elderly or particularly vulnerable, we'll take a hard look at those and try to open those reports as full investigations. And of course, we also go after the licensees who are defrauding the consumers, whether they're licensees by TDI or attorneys licensed by the state. These are people who hold a level of trust that we need to hold account when we have information that they are defrauding consumers, and so we'll pursue those cases as well.
All right, so you've got a hot case, and you go, hey, this is egregious, let's go after this guy, okay, say for an example. Do you have to go to the local district attorney's office where this crime has been committed to go through their office to prosecute it?
Again, it's going to depend on the facts. I would say that's going to be that most of the time that's true. We will investigate the case completely before we do any type of referral to a prosecutor. We want to make sure that there is an actual crime that's occurred, and that we know who all the parties were involved. And if there are losses, we want to try to identify all of the losses that were incurred before we take any case to a prosecutor. Fortunately, most of the cases we work are going to be in a district or a county rather, where we have an embedded prosecutor. That's just the reality.
Works better that way.
It does work better that way, and frankly, that's why we embedded a prosecutor there to begin with, because that's where the majority of our cases are being worked, or in those counties. But we have presented cases to district attorneys' offices throughout the state, and have been very successful in doing that. And in those instances where we've had a county with a district attorney or a county attorney who did not have the expertise for a complex financial crime, we have the luxury that lots of law enforcement agencies do not have, and that is we have embedded prosecutors, and we can make those prosecutors available to assist that district attorney's office, and we have done that. And we're starting to see a lot more of that, frankly. While we don't have a prosecutor embedded in those counties, they are nonetheless deputized by the district attorney for that specific case, and they'll actually indict the case and see it through conviction. And we've had some success in that recently, including out in West Texas, in Swisher County. We had a former agent who was defrauding many victims, elderly victims, very egregious crimes, and we were successful in indicting and prosecuting that individual, and he was ultimately sentenced to a life term, which frankly is unheard of in financial crimes.
A lot of times it seems like justice can't go fast enough, though.
Sure.
I mean, you're seeing these in Swisher County. I'm sure it was more than just one or two people who were affected. It was probably several by the time that you brought this individual to a stop. It just takes time, doesn't it?
It does, and that's just the nature of the beast with the financial crimes. I mean, these are time-consuming cases. You never have a smoking gun, so to speak. So a lot of the evidence is developed through documents and through testimony and interviews, and so that just unfortunately takes time. And when you talk about some of the complexity that we're seeing now in insurance fraud, where you've got multiple suspects, numerous victims, that just makes it even more time consuming, because you have to talk to more victims, more witnesses. There's a lot more paper that you have to go through, and so it takes time, but it's worthwhile, because when you're able to take down a conspiracy involving lawyers, adjusters, case runners, roofer contractors, those type of cases have a great impact on deterring fraud in the future. So, and I think you're going to start seeing a lot more of those in the very near future, because we've been working those cases up for the past several years, and now we're starting to come to the conclusion of those, and you're going to start seeing a lot more indictments.
When you see convictions and when you see prison sentences, that sends a message across the state, does it not?
It does. I think, particularly with white-collar crimes, financial crimes, I think there's a tendency to believe that those are, crimes that often receive some sort of lighter sentence, a deferred adjudication, or a probationary sentence. I think you're seeing now sentences that actually do involve jail time. And I talked about the life sentence we had in West Texas. Obviously you're familiar with the Millennium Title case we had in Tarrant County, where the suspect there, Nancy Carroll, was sentenced to 10 years. Livesey case, the attorney got 5 years. This is actual jail time. We had a former agent in the Houston area who was defrauding consumers, and she was sentenced to 20 years. And so we're actually seeing some significant jail time now in a lot of our cases. And I think that speaks to the quality of our investigations, our investigators, but also our prosecutors.
A lot of times, if you look at Florida, you look at California, you probably look at New York, their fraud units, they seem to be twice, three times the size of what you have. Does it mean they have more fraud to fight with, more fight against? Does it mean your office is not large enough? Where does it stand?
Well, I don't know that we can compare ourselves to those states, apples to apples, so to speak. Some of those states are just structured differently, their departments, and so we are where we need to be, I think, and of course there's plenty of work. So if we were to increase in size, we would certainly have the work here to investigate. But again, I think with what we have, we're doing a great job, and we're fortunate we have strong partners with the industry, investigative units, as well as our partners with the National Insurance Crime Bureau, and so and other law enforcement. Frankly, we work with other agencies, whether it's sheriff departments or local police departments or other state agencies and federal agencies. We work jointly with the FBI and other federal partners quite a bit. So, we have a very strong presence here in the state, collectively fighting insurance fraud.
You mentioned you've got prosecutors and investigators embedded in Tarrant County, Dallas County, Bexar County, Harris County, Travis County. There's a couple of areas that seem to be left out, the Valley and El Paso. Are those problem areas or areas that you may move into, or how does that stand?
We actually, we have an investigator embedded in McAllen, and we worked with the FBI, and we work cases out of the Valley quite a bit, as well as we've got investigators working cases currently in El Paso. We have good partnership with the El Paso County District Attorney's Office, and we've presented cases to the office, and they're prosecuting those cases. So we're working them there. We haven't made a decision whether to embed any type of prosecutor in those areas at this point in time. And that's certainly something we would consider in the future. And if the circumstances were right, we would pursue that. But where we are today, I think, is where we need to focus our efforts. And we're not neglecting those areas by any means. We are actually in there working cases and having success getting those prosecuted. But for the time being, again, I think where we have prosecutors embedded is probably where we're going to remain for the time being.
If someone were from the outside to look at your office, it seems like the group of investigators and prosecutors that you have in place right now has been pretty stable. Haven't seen a lot of movement. Yourself, you've been here for a while, probably just as long or maybe longer than any fraud director that I can recall. That must be a good feeling to be able to have people in place and continue investigations without any interruptions, et cetera.
Sure. I mean, that's a testament to the folks we bring on board. They're experienced investigators. They have a passion for this type of work. White-collar crime is not often the sexier of the types of crimes out there. It's labor-intensive. You've got to spend a lot of time reviewing complex, difficult documents, financial records, and again, there's rarely is there a smoking gun involved. So you have to, search hard and delve in deep into financial records and talking to people to prove your case. And so it's very challenging type work. And so the folks we have on board are people who like that type of work. Similarly with the prosecutors, it's challenging prosecutions. They're not easy cases to make. And oftentimes you're dealing with very sophisticated actors who are very knowledgeable themselves, in the industry themselves, and so for the prosecutor, it's also equally challenging. And folks that work in this area have a desire to be here and want to be here. And so you're right, there is very little attrition, and so because of that, we are able to build strong relationships and partnerships with our counterparts at the local and state level and federal level. And so we're seeing a lot of success because of that.
What is the best way to report insurance fraud to the Texas Department of Insurance? Whether you're a consumer, whether you're an insurance company, what is the best way, by phone or email or what have you? And again, how much information are you looking for in that initial contact? And what type of feedback is the person who reports that, when and how are they going to receive it?
Sure. So the best way is to do it electronically, and either through our website at Texas Department of Insurance. There's a link through our website that provides, if you're a industry member or a consumer, the general public, there are links there that direct you to online reporting. A lot of our SIU partners will report directly through NICB or NAIC, again, National Insurance Crime Bureau or the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. And so electronically is the best for us. Now, having said that, we welcome reporting in any fashion. We'll take phone calls, we'll take emails, we'll take regular mail through the U.S. mail. But for us here internally, it's best if it comes electronically, because then it's automatically fed into our case management system and then reviewed much quicker that way. In terms of the detail of information, as much information as you can provide us is the best. And the forms, the online forms themselves, will kind of drive that for us. They'll ask for certain information. There's a synopsis section where you can actually type in kind of the meat of the facts into that section. But you can also attach documents, and so we welcome as much information as you can provide to us is best, because that will be, as I indicated, we're going to review every single report that comes in as well as all the attachments. And so as much detail as you can provide us at the beginning will really help us in determining whether or not that's something we can pursue.
And as far as the response back to them, knowing that, hey, somebody got this, somebody's looking
Sure.
at this, somebody's doing something with it.
Every report that comes in will automatically generate a letter back. And so typically that's through email. However, if it's something sent in or called in, and if it's not anonymous, we're actually provided a contact person. We respond back saying that we received your report, we're going to review it, and if it's something that we can open and pursue, we'll be back in touch with that person at that point in time.
Good deal. Chris Davis, Associate Commissioner and Chief Investigator of the Texas Department of Insurance Fraud Unit.